We're now being recorded, folks. If anybody wants to see this afterwards, you can. It means you've got to go through the whole thing again. Okay, so hello, and I hear, good. Good, Richard's coming, good. The more people come, the smaller you all get, which is interesting. Hi, Richard. Can you hear me? No. Richard?
Yeah.
Good to
Sorry.
see you. Good that you came. Okay.
Almost deafening on my audio. I had to turn it down.
Oh, well, that's me. I mean, I'm in extreme dissonance at the moment.
I hope not. We'll all be in consonance soon.
My favorite position. DLJ, you disappeared. Okay. So thank you everybody for coming. Welcome. And to all the people who've been with me, we've been together for quite a while. I think it's almost 2 years. I don't remember exactly, but it's actually quite amazing. We've done some very, very light subjects. Tonight will be another light subject. Well, part of it will be actually. And we're talking about dissonance and harmony. And to give you a spoiler, it's all dissonance. But don't take my word for it. I will explain why. In any case, the rules most of you know because you are. Michael's coming. Okay, the rules are: I will speak as short as I possibly can, which is very difficult because I have a lot to say. But I'm going to try and keep it down so that afterwards we can discuss things. I usually throw a lot of disparate things at you that are connected, so you can go for the ones that interest you. Hi there, Michael. I can't see you though. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I just need to find a place for my phone so that my camera would show me.
Okay. So now we're gonna. Okay, good. Anyway, so now, okay, so oh yes. So after I've spoken for the few minutes that I do, those who want to say something, you've got little yellow hands somewhere that you press, and I can see them. And okay, Terry's not here yet. Anyway, so then I will try and do it in the order that you've done it, although I can't guarantee it. Okay. And sometimes I skip an order because I see somebody wants to say something directly connected to what happened. Anyway, that's the order of things. So the frustrating thing is that there's never an end to philosophy, and neither to science and to art. And in fact, the more we ask, the more we find. On one hand, that is liberating, but that is itself a dissonance. It's a frustration. We have it'll never end. So even the things we discuss here, we won't come to conclusion. Even that. So Carl Sagan said that the universe is not required to be in perfect harmony with human ambition. And it certainly, though, looks as though it is, with everything seemingly working in a balanced clockwork fashion and aligned just right, although it's not quite as good as it looks. The very nature of time as change indicates an underlying state of constant self-righting. Poised as we are, somebody else coming in, poised as we are,
Ron, you just went on mute. You got to unmute yourself, Ron. You just, I think when you let somebody in, you press the mute button by mistake.
Poised as we are.
Thank you.
Dot, dot, dot.
Okay. You missed the most essential thing I wanted to say this evening, by the way. You can all leave. That's it.
We are
Okay.
poised.
So I will try not to press things. Sorry. Anyway, so poised as we seem to be on the edge between what is observed and what is about to happen, systems, well, all of life, in fact, are constantly on the verge of change. Metaphorically, I could say like a pile of sand that we keep adding to. At some point, the pile of sand will partly collapse and reform to form another pile. Basically, the tension is between being and being something else, between order and disorder. The latter, the disorder, always being held at bay by the urge to stay the same. That is tension. That is dissonance. Okay, it's a delicate line, by the way. The dissonance that holds things together close enough for them to function. If you've got too much dissonance, everything collapses. It has to be a certain type of dissonance that's balanced. So I need to ask about harmony. I know people like harmony, and I'm going to disabuse you of harmony. But in any case, harmony is supposedly a balance between different forces, but it cannot be an absolute balance, only an approximate balance. Okay, it isn't an approximate balance of tension to maintain itself. Is it not, in fact, a form of dissonance? Harmony is an example of dissonance. So somebody mentioned Ukraine, and I can't not mention it, because it's there and it's bad, whatever. Before that happened, the world, at least the Western world, was in seeming harmony. Things seemed to be going along, and then suddenly, out of the blue, this thing happened. A little while ago, I saw a title in the Times, the London Times, that said that Russia shatters our faith in rational behavior. Ha! Rationality is subjective. Rationality is in the eyes of the beholder. There is no objective rational behavior. For Putin, his actions are rational. If you spoke to him, he would give you, and he does, and he did, give us very, very rational reasons for what he's done. Terry, I'm pleased to see you. I thought you'd forgotten. Can't hear you.
Just got delayed a little bit. It was having trouble getting upstairs. In time.
Okay.
I didn't forget, just had a little trouble getting here.
I'm very pleased to hear it. Anyway, I'm very pleased you're here. I can't speak about science if you're not here, can I? So, so news is dissonance. Things that we are told as news is often not as we know things are, as far as we're concerned. We are into constant dissonance. If we can't or don't know whether to believe the news, what can we believe? I often hear in science that, especially in quantum physics, reality doesn't exist, which is a ridiculous statement. The whole notion is dissonance. What you see doesn't exist. Well, what does that even mean? But by the way, a survey carried out by King's College in London suggested that 60% of people wished modern life could be more simple. Yes, well, so do we all, most possibly. Unrestrained free market capitalism has given us tremendous choice. Yes, we want choice, but when we have it in its unlimited variety, we regret having it, which reminds me of something I think I told you once. I once went to the cinema what you Americans call theater. Well, you know what I mean. The thing that shows movies and films. I went in the afternoon between lectures, and the cinema was almost empty, and I was in a state of dissonance. I did not know where to sit. I mean, you sit in the middle, right? But do I sit in the back in the middle, in the middle, in the middle? I really didn't know what to do, which is I found extremely interesting. That was my story of dissonance. Do you know, by the way, there are 80,000 combinations of type, size, and flavor in Starbucks, and it would take you 218 years to try each one if you drank 1 cup of coffee a day. Therefore, and I know this is interesting for you, and I'm sure you're very, very excited by this, you will never know if you've chosen the perfect coffee. You will be dead before you have the chance to find out. Now that is dissonance. So Socrates said, we've got to get to Socrates sometime, right? So Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. But it was a long time ago. And examined life immediately produces dissonance. It's when we examine life that our troubles begin. Who is happier, philosophers or somebody sitting on a beach watching the waves day after day after day? But we are, you know, there's this thing called, but this is progress, and progress causes dissonance to everybody, right? This phrase "moving on," let's move on, okay, is itself dissonance. Is where you're moving on to. You're moving on to more dissonance. So we are told to examine ourselves constantly. This is quite a modern thing. Examine yourself, see who you are, etc., etc. But that is dissonance. It's like looking into a mirror and seeing one's reflection mirrored through another mirror into a seemingly endless array of images that somehow represent our being. Now, is this harmony or is it dissonance? First of all, are all the images the same? Well, of course not. They're different sizes and at different times. That is dissonance. Even worse is the fact that we don't know if our image is how others see us. I have no idea how you lot see me. I only know how I see myself. And that is very, very subjective. Philosophers unwittingly work within a horizon of inherited inadequate concepts. So do scientists and so do historians. And talking about history is a long line of dissonances. In fact, it's one long dissonance. History is a story of change. If there'd be no change, there would be nothing to report. Something like a headline in a newspaper that you would never see. Today, nothing happened. The aim, if I can generalize, is to bridge the gap between nothingness and something in order to eliminate dissonance. That in itself is an example of dissonance. We are immersed in dissonance. Can we still enjoy Woody Allen? When Woody Allen married his ex-partner's daughter and was accused of molesting his daughter, Dylan Farrow, then 7 years old, what does this do to us? Confusion, anger, and betrayal. And I'm not talking about whether it's true or anything. I'm just saying that reading that, it is confusing for us, those of us who like Woody Allen. Can we despise the creator but still love the film? Do the moral lives of artists affect the quality of their work? Should we stop engaging with art produced by people who do bad things? I can mention Heidegger and I can mention Wagner, two people who produced wonderful art that were pretty horrible creatures. How do we deal with that? Can art be morally bad? Are Hitler's paintings morally bad? What is an immoral artist. In today's cultural mores, there appear to be some clear parameters about what makes people immoral: sexual exploitation, racism, colonialism, homophobia, and of course, transphobia. But what about financial exploitation, cruelty to family or spouses, bad parenting? These are some of our greatest artists, writers, etc. What do we do about that? This is all dissonance that we deal with every day, all the time. How should we respond to Nabokov's Lolita? And up to now, it's been simple, folks, and now we're moving on to time. So hang on, okay? Now, I'm not joking, by the way. Dissonance has everything to do with time. When two things happen simultaneously, it's problematic, and everything always does, or not. Look at cyclic time versus linear time. Cyclic time, Buddhism and the East are very, very big on cyclic time. And we have cyclic time. We have the days and the holidays and the birthdays. We have the first Sunday of the month, which for some unknown reason for me seems to come quicker than every other Sunday, but that's my own personal dissonance. But that's secular, but at the same time, sorry about that, there is linear time that goes on, and it doesn't matter how much we believe in secular time, linear time goes on from birth to death. It doesn't matter what we do and what we believe. Now, the present, the past, and the future seem clear, right? But the dissonance, that part of what we are, I'm not going to go into now for the moment, but those of you who've been with me before or have read my book, Time to Tell, know what I think of now and all that. So I can't go into that now, sorry. Let me just throw something in. If memories are of what happened in the past, how are they taking place now? That's just something I want to throw in. And now I want to go into something that we've been arguing about now for a couple of months, which is the future. And I can't let it go. Okay, so hang on there. I'm going to talk about the road not taken, which I mentioned before. Okay, there's no such thing. That's the first thing I want to say. And since you're not allowed to speak now, you can't leap at me. You can do it afterwards. Okay, I call the future the anticipatory past, i.e. the past that rightly or wrongly anticipated where we are now, that is already in the past, while the past is the memory of anticipation, or a collection of anticipated futures, so that the future is at once the future of the past and also the past of the past. I'm sure you're all hanging on now and you're with me. I shall now explain. I shall try to. Since we never arrive at the future, we never arrive there, okay? The future is always the past. And that joins the past that's already before that one, in its continual movement as part of what we are. Circular, but dissonant. In fact, a circular dissonance, which is in itself a dissonant sentence. It would perhaps be too strong to state that we are condemned to the past, even though it does indicate the unbreakable link to our experiences and our memories of them. And another favorite topic of all of us, of course, is free will. So our strong sense of free will is based on anticipation of the future so strong that it is as if it is already here. The feeling that we can decide on the future is a peg of our being. We all believe that we can decide on the future, even if that's wrong. I never said the last bit. The vision of an open road ahead, and that all we need to do is to go along it, is accompanied by our sense of free will, where the road not taken is not only the warning of what we could have done, but is also a proof, in inverted commas, that we had the free will not to do so. But the road not taken is a misnomer. The road not taken exists only as memory of a potential future that wasn't fulfilled. Oh, it's very quiet there. It's wonderful. The difference between that and any other potential future is an understanding that where we have arrived does not correspond with where we would be had we taken the other road. It's a dissonance. In other words, the future is itself a continuous dissonance that is always with us, since we are always in anticipation of where we will be. Always, every second, every millisecond, anticipation of what we will be. The road not taken is an anticipated potential false memory. Now, I'm sure that's all very, very clear, and you will maybe want to ask questions and maybe not. Anyway, so that was the easy part today. Now we come on to science, and just want to mention that until the 20th century, Newton's view of a universe that works in an orderly fashion was rooted within culture in all spheres. Order was behind everything, and it meant predictability. Then along came quantum mechanics, quantum physics, which showed that things work in unpredictable ways. Schrödinger, some 70 years ago, said that the paradoxical fact that the laws of classical physics, such as those of Newtonian mechanics and thermodynamics, are ultimately based on disorder. Disorder is dissonance. Now, Stephen Hawking, by the way, refers to the lack of imperfection when the universe was formed after the Big Bang. Had there been perfection, he says, the stars would have aligned themselves so perfectly, equidistant from each other, and nothing would have happened. Instead, the slight imperfections, the stars came together in clusters. How could it, in fact, nature be harmonious when humans themselves are a mass of dissonance as part of nature? It all began with chaos, as you all know, according to the Bible, which states that in the beginning there was tohu vavohu, which is Hebrew for disorder and chaos. Things did not improve after that, with Eve not at all content with the perfection of the Garden of Eden. Thereafter, it was downhill all the way, folks, with evil and general mayhem on a roller coaster ride to the present. Dissonance makes the world go round, it seems. So science moves forward by refuting theories, looking for dissonance and embracing it. As astrophysicist Saul Perlmutter says, science isn't a matter of trying to prove something. It is a matter of trying to figure out how you are wrong and trying to find your mistakes. Well, how do you find out you're wrong when the feeling of reality clashes with the findings of science? For example, quantum physics. This is a dissonance, that is an underlying dissonance in science. I'll be finishing soon. I'll have to leave out stuff, sorry. If you look for perfection, you'll never be satisfied, said Lvov's wife in Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. Have no fear of perfection, said Salvador Dali. You'll never reach it. Libertarianism is supposedly the ultimate freedom to choose what is best for the greatest good for the greatest number of people. That gives immediate dissonance between people in the majority versus the rest. In fact, all political systems are examples of dissonance. Dissonance is frowned upon when happiness is the ultimate aim. After all, the unalienable right to the pursuit of happiness is stated in the United States Declaration of Independence. Theologian and mystic Thomas Merton strikes a chord when he states that happiness is not a matter of intensity, but of balance, rhythm, and harmony. The notion of a simpler, balanced existence does seem reasonable. All you need is love, was the message of the 1960s, when the flower power was the way to peace and happiness, and New Age became a simple and hip way of achieving a perfect utopian balance. We spoke last time, and I think the time before, about borders and boundaries. These are examples of dissonance. A boundary, for example, the horizon, defines one's place, making a place possible at all. We extend boundaries by asking questions about them, and so cause an ever greater dissonance. We are, in other words, the cause of our own dissonance. Some very, very important thing I do want to mention is translations. All translations are dissonance. Let me give you an example. Heidegger's Dasein, which is translated as, often, it's translated as being there, and lately I've seen it being translated as being here. Now, the point of what I'm saying is that the da in Dasein in German means there. So that it's translated as being there. But we who know German know that da also means here, which means that translators had a problem. Now, you either translate it as being here or being there. In German, it doesn't matter. And Heidegger wrote in German. So the translator who decided to translate it as being here, and the translator decided to translate as being there, they had two different things in their mind, and they had not the faintest idea what Heidegger meant by Dasein. So I was stunned by that. I was so used to seeing being there, and then suddenly saw being here, and I realized what was going on. The translation only goes according to what the person wants his philosophy to be. And that might not have been Heidegger's philosophy, and we have no way of finding out. That's the problem. Okay. Plus, you've got a problem of the capital letter that I don't want to go into. We cause dissonance by trying to eliminate it. We are renewing Shakespeare because it's a bit rude. Disney is no longer au fait. Enid Blyton, that I read with great joy, you can't read anymore because it's sexist or whatever. I mean, what is happening here? We are trying to stop dissonance by causing it. Twitter as a platform encourages dissonance and extreme views. You have to have an instant response. You have to. You don't think before making a point. There's no more nuance. It's dissonance all the way. Just going to speak about art. I think I've finished my time. All art is dissonance, since it arranges and interferes with what was there. Creating something from nothingness is dissonance. William Faulkner said, the aim of every artist is to arrest motion, which is life, by artificial means, and hold it fixed so that 100 years later, when a stranger looks at it, it moves again, since it is life. I wanted to talk about modern philosophy from Descartes, which is basically subjective, and about Kant, etc. But you've had enough of me talking, and I can do that later. All of life's experiences consist of the effort to replace dissonance with harmony. That itself is dissonance. The problem is that true balance is not to be found, since it is impossible. Life is movement and change, so that the effort to find what we feel life should be is thwarted. since the search itself is part of that change. It was Darwin who said it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. I'll just finish off with this little bit. Here is how Orson Welles' character Harry Lime put it in the 1949 movie The Third Man. In Italy, for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed. But they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did that produce? The cuckoo clock. And now, folks, I open the floor to you to say whatever you want to. And the first one, very quick off the mark, James. James, it's yours.
Thank you. That was great. That was an interesting talk. I really appreciate it. I want to talk about dissonance because I'm a musician. So the dissonance, dissonance and consonance are really what music theory is made out of, both counterpoint and musical harmony. And so all the music we hear is a combination of those two. And we call it, when we talk about harmony, that's what we mean. We mean combinations of consonance and dissonance. In other words, for music to take place in time, there have to be harmonic, there have to be consonant harmonic instances, and there have to be dissonant harmonic instances to complement them in order to create the motive force in music for it to proceed across cadences in time. So, and usually these cadences are fairly short. They could last as long as 16 maybe beats, or they could be as short as 2 beats or 4 beats, that sort of thing. So, and in the old days, in the time of Bach and before that, the counterpuntal art, in the days when the counterpuntal art was basically the preferred method of composition at least by the German composers, the idea was to create object contrast between the lines of melody for each instrument or in each voice, but to arrive at a synthesis of consonance and dissonance, but one that really just was based on the melodic, accidents of conjunctions of melodic lines. And this was a science. This is something actually that was probably a much more difficult science to learn. Most people nowadays, when they study musical theory, they find counterpoint hard to learn, and they find harmony easier to grasp because it's simply a vertical conjunction. It's studied as a vertical conjunction of notes. And the counterpoint seems hard to the modern mind because it involves finding the places where running notes have to form consonances or dissonances, where they form consonances or dissonances by accidents. So I just want to sort of like object that way to your idea of contrasting dissonance to harmony. Harmony is both dissonance and consonance together. And in science, my opinion is that I think in art in general, like aesthetically, in aesthetics, I would concentrate dissonance as what is uncomfortable, or what is difficult, or what is ungraspable, and consonance would be the easy. In other words, things that, like in an art painting, we find if things follow lines, if things seem congruent, if things seem to reflect reality the way from our perspective, then we feel comfortable with it. We find it a consonant aesthetic experience. If we find things to be too jumbled up, like let's say Miro or something like that, we might back off and say, oh, this looks a little bit dissonant to me because there's things that I can't quite associate with each other. And then in science, of course, dissonance, I won't talk about your theories of time right now, but in science, the dissonance is force. So we have, in science, we always have force. We have gravity, we have motive force, we have nuclear force, tons of force. And all those forces can be relatively dissonant or relatively consonant. In other words, you can have things that appear at rest. They're so consonant that you can't detect any motion. But we know that the Earth is always in motion. So how can that be? You know, and of course the oceans, which are 50% of the Earth, they're always, or possibly more than that, yeah. But I mean, the oceans, which are a lot of the surface, are constantly at motion. So the idea that things are kind of relatively consonant in the world, and of course humans are just typical. We're dissonant too. You're right about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James. That's interesting. That as soon as something is relatively anything, it has to be dissonant. It has to be because it's relative against something else.
I think I was just going to say, for a human, it's partly your constancy. In other words, if people feel they can depend on you, if people trust you, you're kind of like viewed as a consonant being. If you're inconsistent and apt to go off, off the ledge sometimes, then people will view you more dissonant, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'm going to not go in the order because I'd like to ask Bella, because Bella has not been with us before, I don't think. So I think that's fair. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Bella, thank
Hello.
you. Yeah.
Good morning.
Hi, Bella.
My name's Bela. I'm in Toronto, Ontario. So I'm across the room from James. I'm an audio engineer, if he's a musician. And I just wanted to comment on well, starting with waves. So when you have so in sound, you have resonance, dissonance, and harmonics, where resonance would be two waves that are in phase or more or less identical, and they would combine to give you more of the same. And then harmonics are the multiples of such. So they do combine, but in a more complicated way to give you more of the same. And then dissonance would be as waves become out of phase. What I'm getting at is when two waves are maximally out of phase, which is to say they're 180 degrees out of phase, they actually combine to give zero. They completely cancel each other out. And so my question is, you mentioned the news being dissonance. So would the maximum form of the news cancel so the news is maximum dissonance, would that cancel truth? Would those two combine to cancel what is true? And in art, the maximum form of art or the maximum dissonance in art, would that completely challenge every notion you have of what art is? And something that comes to mind is, I think, a fictional quote from Jack the Ripper. I think it might have been in a movie, but he made a statement that I've created the ultimate form of art in the 20th century. And so that would be the maximum challenge of everything anyone could think of art as beauty or anything along those lines. I don't know if like you said, I'm new here, so I don't know if I'm a little
you're fine.
Out to the edge, but if any of that made any sense, that's kind of what's going through my head.
We're all close to the edge here. It's okay. That's part of what happens here. You mentioned a dirty word. You mentioned the word truth. So that would get me going.
That's exactly it.
That would get me going. I don't know what you would do.
Or I should say what we perceive of as truth, and so that there's maybe an individual truth for every perception. And then, yeah, then what, does everything challenge that at all times? Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what you could possibly do to get to the truth. You can get to small truth with a small t, and we all have our truths, but the truth is a problem, because I can't see how we could possibly get to that. Even among us here, the few people here, we would never agree on the truth of something that I'm sure we wouldn't, in fact. And thank you very much, Peter. It doesn't mean you can't talk again, but put down your hand, because otherwise I'll keep on calling on you. Richard, I'm pleased that you came. I know you weren't feeling well, so you may have a go now.
Thanks. Have a go. By the way, I disagree slightly about truth, but only in that in logic, which is, as you know, a very bounded system, one does have true and false, and one can prove it, but it's artificial. It's not the same as the real world. But I do think philosophers, us probably, people who talk about it, understand that this is actually a sophisticated system, but we've allowed Trumpian alternate truth to come out, so that it seems to me that normal people don't believe there are any facts they can believe at all. And this has made the world in some ways a more dangerous place. On the other hand, I must admit that when you get to the Ukrainian crisis, you can look at what the West are saying, and you can look at what the Russians are saying, or at least Putin's saying, and you can, no, not Putin himself. You can look at what the apologists for Putin are saying, and you can see that there is some truth in some of the apologies for him, but there's no justification for the war that he's carrying on in Ukraine. But you can see that we treated Russia badly, that we went into Iraq, that we went into Afghanistan, we went into Libya, you know. But the trouble is, you get all these things given equal status when they're not equal. There's a total difference. But anyway, to go back to what you were talking about, I would say there has to be a creative tension. And it comes to a sort of Hegelian dialectic. I stress Hegelian because last time I used dialectic somewhere, people presumed I was a Marxist and I was talking about the Marxist dialectic. But I'm talking about the fact you have a thesis that's put forward, an antithesis, and between them, they may produce a new synthesis, and thus ideas advance. To go back to your point about the whole subject of this, dissonance, assonance, consonance, in society, in ethnology, there's been put forward that society needs to have either internal dissonance or external dissonance to hold it together. I don't think they quite mean as far as it's gone with the cultural wars that are going on in America and Britain. I'm not sure about Israel. The anti-woke feelings, the feelings that there's them and us, the enemy within, the fact that most of us being almost certainly liberal progressives are counted as the enemy within in most of the Anglophone world. But we do need either an enemy that's external. You need stimulation. If you have total order, there's no advancement. If you have total chaos, there's total chaos, entropy. So therefore, there's a balance, and everything is seeking that balance. Whether it finds it or not, I don't know. On the music question, I rather like some modern jazz. Now, my wife and many of my friends can't stand it, but you can have something that starts off as almost total dissonance. It hurts. But then suddenly you start to get threads, you get, the notes start to make sense, and it starts to wind itself together. Now, whether that's just in your brain, because other people I've talked to don't seem to ever get this idea, but to me, it suddenly turns into a thing of beauty. And that's a reason why I personally listen to some of the more extreme forms. I mean, when I want something quiet, I'll listen to mellow type of jazz or blues. But some of the more atonal, chaotic jazz is quite difficult to get to. And when you read a book, you can have a boring book where you know everything, you know the narrative is going to be in a certain way. What's interesting is when you're trying to work out what makes sense, but you always want to put everything into some, well, no, I always want to make it coherent. Now, I realize some people may love to live in a world that isn't coherent at all. But I think that normal human nature says we make sense of this world. Now, it is possible that you can't make sense of the world, but you go on trying to do that. I hope that that made a sort of sense to all of you. It was putting a whole sort of ideas. But just going back to society, I remembered something that came up when Ron was talking about it. There is a state of alienation, which is rather different from the internal strife, but to some extent causes it, where the young is in total alienation against the established order. This can be destructive or constructive, depending, but to have creation, you need that type of feeling, which causes people to write great plays, poetry, express themselves musically, because they feel. Now, Ron and I, and most of us, are now older and possibly established and possibly reasonably sort of comfortable, and we don't feel that enemy from society any longer.
You speak for yourself.
Okay, you still feel like that, do you?
No, I'm just kidding. I got it all the time. By the
you
way,
understand what I'm talking about anyway.
yes. But by the way, every generation has always said that the youth are useless.
I know that.
I mean, by the way, Socrates, and that's going back quite a way, he complained that I can't quote exactly, I haven't got it here, but complained that the youth of today, i.e. 2000 odd years ago, they are rude and they got no respect for their elders. And this is going on from generation to generation.
I realise that. On the other hand,
and music, which I don't understand why they're terrible. The Beatles were terrible. I heard my parents said it. The Beatles, what sort of a noise is that? And it became classic. It's always been all the way through. And by the way, what you say about listening to difficult music, eventually getting used to it, I can say the same about reading some French philosophers. Don't understand a word, but if you carry on reading, somehow you'll begin to understand what they're talking about. That's been.
I'm not sure I understand Lacan or Derrida.
You haven't. Well, you've got to read more. You will get into it, and etc. Thank you very much, Richard. Terry, and Katie, good. Yes. Can't hear you.
You wanted me to talk next?
Yes. You are Terry, right?
Couple quick comments on that. The quantum experiments that you mentioned, I've looked at those. I'm actually very disappointed. They were doing some interesting work, but they've been interpreted in a way that it fails to recognize there's different forms of quantum mechanics going on. Sometimes it does not disprove reality. I mean, it's just a press bubble that's going on with that. So yes, quantum mechanics has some serious aspects, but that's gotten overblown. They're trying to make Schrödinger something that it is. The other quick comment, I was very surprised you said that reading has become sexist. The actual reading, not the writing. Reading has become sexist for some people.
Oh yeah. You mean the people I mentioned?
I mean, reading as opposed to listening to a video. Listening to videos is not sexist. Reading is sexist, or something like that. I didn't. You made a quick comment about that. It was just so.
You mean like changing Shakespeare and all that?
I didn't know quite what you meant. You just said something about reading being sexist, but I didn't know if you meant
but you know that in your neck of the woods, books are taken out of libraries. Perfectly good literature. Kids are not allowed to read it because it's got stuff in there they don't want kids to read. It's etc. Right?
Okay. Well, yeah, we got some. Okay, I think I may have misunderstood. I thought you were saying something that yes, we had plenty of the book banning type mentality going on right now. I just want to mention two things from science about this thing about dissonance versus harmony. There's a thing called a Fourier transform that's fundamental to quantum mechanics and actually a lot of physics, but especially quantum mechanics. We have two worlds that we live in. One is the one that we usually perceive, and the other one is the world of momentum waves that we do not perceive. Our brains are not structured to see that one, but it's just as real as this one. If you take a wave and you make it infinitely perfectly harmonic, like a radio station that broadcasts exactly one wave frequency forever, then in the Fourier transform that reduces to a single point, which is like the radio frequency on your radio station. You know, it's the same idea. You know, so you get a perfect wave, you get a perfectly precise point in your radio station. So all of your harmony just reduced down to one tiny point. Now on the other side, if you take total chaos, everything's just rumbling around and randomly everything's jumbled up and everything like that, and you have a giant mass of this, you get something called a temperature, which is again a single number. The very act of the chaos smooths itself out to the point where there can be characterized by nothing more than, once again, a single number. You will never find anything interesting on either of those extremes. Somehow this interlacing, this weaving between absolutely perfect rigid harmony for eternity, the waves that reduce down to a single point, or absolute total chaos, which again reduces down to a single point. Neither of those extremes gives us anything of what we're doing now or what we're talking about. There's a curious mix that seems to be deeply, profoundly fundamental to why we exist at all. And it's some kind of balance. So I think dissonance versus harmony is just a very, very deep topic in science. And I think even at the mathematical level, now, we can talk about how it percolates over into society itself, but boy, it goes a lot deeper than that. The very fact that quantum mechanics has those two extremes, and the thermodynamics has that same extreme, which just keeps popping up. Too much of one extreme, everything collapses, you get nothing interesting. So, hooray for disharmony and for harmony both, because without either one, we don't get anything. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you. Katie and then Carl, and then Michael, and then Claudio. I hope I remember that. And then I won't remember what I just said, but okay, where are we? Who did I say next?
Katie.
Katie, yeah, you moved around. Right.
You said, I wanted to parse out a little bit. You said like moving from dissonance to dissonance, which I agree with you, but I think like one wouldn't move from one dissonant to like, let's pretend you're moving cities or something. You're anticipating it might be better before the reality sets in that maybe like it just brings like new positives and minuses. Otherwise, I don't think you would change if you're like, well, I'm just going to go from one prison to another prison. Why would you do anything? I think like it's like the expectation might be that it might be better, which motivates you to make a change, and then the reality sets in that it just brings its own set of nice things, and a few things that are So I think that otherwise you wouldn't be changing. You wouldn't be making changes.
But isn't every movement a change?
Yeah, but you're expecting it somehow the changes to improve. You're making the change to improve your experience of reality. Is it, or am I?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, we anticipate things to get better. It doesn't mean that they do, and we won't know until we're there, and then it's gone anyway. I mean, that was my point about that we never get to the future, never. We anticipate the future, and we'll get to what we anticipated and find out that it's the past. We'll never get to tomorrow. That's all I'm saying. Never. Tomorrow will be yesterday, etc., etc. Okay. Thank you, Katie. Who did I say next, by the way? Carl. Yeah.
Yes, hi.
Hi there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, a great introductory lecture there. The thing that I'm kind of interested in is in this concept of, when we talk about, for example, an ideal world, trying to perfect the world, trying to change the world by eliminating anything that's dissonant in a sense, and we imagine harmony. But whenever we talk about that, people always talk about the dichotomies of, you can't understand lightness without darkness. You can't understand happiness without sadness. So there's always these two aspects of it. And so my question always was, can we ever achieve harmony? And I think what you said is basically from your lecture is that we can never achieve harmony. It's always in dissonance. Dissonance is life. Life is always changing. I agree with that. And maybe kind of made me think, well, when life ends, when you're dead, there's no longer dissonance. So the only harmony is death, in a sense. When you're dead, you're not experiencing dissonance anymore.
That is a very good point, but I'm going to leap on that in a minute.
Sure. So I was wondering, could we, and this is a question for everyone, could we ever imagine a utopia then? Or what would happen if there was no longer, because I'm thinking, for example, this is kind of separate, the cliche of the Buddhist monk in a cave, right? Who doesn't experience all the changes in the world. I mean, maybe he changes biologically, maybe he experience some friction and dissonance from hunger once in a while. But if it's in complete meditation, nirvana in a sense, enlightenment, at total peace with himself or herself, would you consider that harmony? So is this kind of maybe possible?
No.
No. Okay. and I'd like to know why. Yeah.
I have no idea what somebody could possibly feel when he doesn't feel. I don't know what that means.
Right.
I've often asked somebody, can you please tell me when you're not feeling? And they get very angry with me when I ask them that.
But is all feeling dissonance? Can you experience harmonious feelings? Maybe no.
I don't know. I've never felt harmonious feeling.
Well, just because you haven't felt doesn't mean it cannot exist.
You're right.
I'm wondering if you could be at total peace with yourself.
I don't know. I need to speak to somebody who tells me that they're at perfect peace with themselves. And after speaking
that's
to
true.
me
But, I mean,
for a minute, they won't be.
Yeah. I mean, in society, there will always be, being in society, we always experience some kind of conflict. And I agree with you about the news. I've heard some people say that if you take a news sabbatical for like a week or a month, your health will improve.
It's possible.
So there's something about that. But anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I just got the first thing you said was something about when you're dead, then you're in harmony.
As a potential theory, yeah, because there's no longer any change, really.
Yeah, but you have to be alive.
And you're not feeling.
Yeah, but you have to be alive to know that. I mean,
or others would know. Yeah, that's true.
Others don't.
Yeah.
Count.
I'm not saying that the person who's dead will experience harmony. I'm just saying in terms of since you said that dissonance is life is dissonance, constant dissonance, then the opposite of life is death. When you're dead, you're no longer feeling, therefore you're no longer in dissonance.
No, when you're dead, you're just not.
Exactly.
It's not that you're not feeling, you're just not.
No, right, yeah.
So that's
and would you then say that is harmony?
No.
No, okay.
Because you're not. I mean,
you're not. Okay.
You're not.
So you're looking at disharmony versus harmony in a sense of feeling, in the umbrella of feeling. You either feel comfortable or you feel dissonant.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
As opposed to just life always changing, which I agree with, right? It's constant change. You never step in the same river twice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Who did I say is next? Was it Michael?
Claudio has had his hand up for quite a while.
Who?
Claudio.
Claudio.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm going to go to Claudio then. Claudio, hi. Who was the one? Claudio?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, well, since entropy increases with time, so I guess we're headed towards increasing this harmony or dissonance, right? But I think that there's both good and bad with dissonance, right? Maybe I'll give you a few examples of both. Before the World War I, World War II, the Holocaust, people were living in relatively peaceful times. Their laws, social institutions were working. Their faiths were unshaken because of the order. There must be a God, right? Then these events occurred, World War I, World War II, and people's faith in humanity, their morality was shaken. And the Holocaust itself, let's say, it also brought dissidence among the Jews because of, let's say, you brought up the Bible, the eternal covenant established between God and his people, eternal. It was kind of like in doubt because how could an event such as the Holocaust also on the benevolent, merciful God, how could they reconcile that event with that type of entity? So there's also other examples. Let's see in the history of the Earth, for example. I'll give you another very important. The Archean eon, right? The atmosphere was dense and toxic, thick with hydrogen. It was with carbon dioxide, methane, and ammonia. So you could ask, how could life forms possibly emerge from this type of environment? But it did, right? Because the cyanobacteria, our earliest ancestor, emerged from this dissonance, right? This harmony between the environment. But then they nearly became extinct through a different type of dissonance, through predation, the predators, right? So you have both good and bad. You have an emergence of life and you have a mass extinction. Then there were other very important future epochs when complex life forms emerged from harmony, developing between the organism and its environment. But there were also several mass extinctions due to disharmony between the organism and the environment. So you have both good and bad. When life, for example, during the Permian epoch, that was a mass extinction. It caused 3 million years of evolution to be erased. So life had to start all over again. So that's a destructive type of dissonance. So those are both good and bad. And one more thing regarding the subatomic world, the atomic world. You have kind of indeterminism and randomness among the quantum particles, right? Yeah, it is these very same particles, along with the four forces of nature, that make life forms like us possible, right? We are, in fact, a collection of atoms. But this complexity of atoms, they clump together to form molecules and then cells, which are even more complex, right? But harmony arises from these complexities because intelligent life forms like us emerge who are able to create social and political institutions, which brings harmony to the world. We bring law and order, right? So those are examples where dissonance can bring harmony. Future life forms that are intelligent, and so on. Thank you. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Claudio. Who did I say?
Michael.
James, please don't help me.
Okay. You asked a question, Ron.
No, it was completely rhetorical.
Your speech is a little deceiving.
It was a completely dissonant question. It was dissonance per se. Michael.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's difficult to me to participate in this abstract philosophical discussion when I know what is going now in Ukraine. And to be honest, I'm not in the mood for this now. And especially if we are talking about things like harmony. What harmony are you talking about? It's just my main dominating thought. But anyway, there is though something about dissonance, which is sort of related to the situation. And this is related to your remark about that 60% of people are not comfortable with dissonance. And this is consistent with what I read recently in a book, you probably read it, by Applebaum, Twilight of Democracy, where she also cited some research that confirmed that a large portion of population is not comfortable with change, with dissonance, with arguments, with diversity of different kinds. And this is the potential base of support for authoritarian dictators like Putin.
Yeah.
And this is what brings them to power. You said that actually that 60% of people prefer to live in a simple world. So that's the better way to describe this. This raises two questions. First, if we used to praise in our democratic society things like diversity and like a lot of different perspectives and debates and so on, which we consider as unconditionally good and positive things. But taking into account that so many people don't feel comfortable with these things, should rather we value not all these things, but just the ability to tolerate these things. So tolerance for diversity, this is good. But diversity by itself, is it always good? Especially if we have too much diversity. And the same question can be asked about change, about innovations, about all these things that we used to consider as something positive for society. But maybe if this happens too fast, and if it happens so fast that most of people cannot accommodate to this change, maybe it's not such a positive thing. That if we judge by consequences, by results, if it makes easier for totalitarian dictators to get the power and to consolidate the power. So this is just human psychology. Maybe we have to take this into account. And another question is that people who promote this change that they consider positive, like diversity, desegregation, and so on, without considering possible negative outcomes, possible backlash, do they always share some responsibility for these outcomes? So that's just something that I was thinking. But I also have a lot of comments about harmony and dissonance in science. Going.
Okay, can we come
I
to
will
that a bit later because other people are waiting and come back to you? Is that all right, Michael?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I'm not sure if Kyoshi has got her hand up, if she's still here. Yeah. Do you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you and Stephen and Roland, and I'm keeping to that. Okay. Keep your places. Right. Yes. Off you go.
So it's my turn.
Yes. Please.
Yeah. So I'm not expert at anything, not the Chinese philosophy, not West philosophy. But however, Chinese idea is harmony is distance. Distance is harmony because they can't exist without the other, because you can't say harmony. Why harmony? Because there's distance, then you say it's harmony. So Chinese concept is the opposite have to exist, only exist when the other exists. You know what I mean? Like harmony is distance, distance is harmony. So that's how Chinese, and then there's Taoism is the started with Laozi. He was born in a very like wartime, like wartime, like wars, like all the time. So then he got enlightened, saying, you know, if I die, there's nothing. Like death, nothing. It's not the harmony or distance because it's nothing. Because you know, if there's no harmony, there's no distance. So death is nothing. So then his theory is called Wu Wei. Like it's hard to explain. Like what you said, the translation always messes up. So Wu Wei kind of means no achievement. So, you know, if you're not a general leading the war, winning, or, you know, when you have no achievement, then you have harmony because you are alive. And but at the same time, like what you mentioned before, it's very interesting because the Chinese is asking ourselves and saying, this is ridiculous because we claim we're a great culture. Where is it? Because we didn't, you know, invented electricity. We didn't invent the engine, you know, we didn't invent the internet, we didn't invent the iPhone. We're, you know, why we're so great. So that's what you said is, seems like distance creates and harmony, it has nothing because it's kind of like a no achievement. It's like a Wu Wei, is because you're not doing anything. And then another thing, I was thinking, I wrote it down, but like I studied architecture, so I don't know music. Like a painting is like it seems like our nature is more looking for balance. And that's classic. But nowadays, you know, like you can see ugly is beauty. You know, whatever exists is beauty. So you can see Picasso's painting, or even like a more modern paintings. In the way, it's like a Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine didn't really achieve anything. I mean, in some sense, like for instance, if you have liver problem, they can't do anything. But they were talking about balance is the whole body. So with your body, like especially when you're aging, nothing is right. Every part is having problem, but overall you're alive. So you are in harmony. Even every organ or every part of you is in distance. So I found that it's very a different concept we're talking about in the West. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to get back to that. Who did I now say? Stephen, right? Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine.
Yeah. First of all, respect to Michael. It is a strange world where things are happening in Ukraine as they are, and we're able to get on with this Zoom meeting. It's a bit weird.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. No. It's not a problem. It's just that's the world we're in. Life goes on. And this, I want to say also, that's a bit scary for me to talk because you're all talking philosophers speak, and some of us are not philosophers, and listening to everything that's happening is like learning a new language. It's quite scary.
We aim to please.
Okay. I just want to throw in something which has nothing to do with this, that you mentioned the third man. My parents were actors and both appeared in the third man. So I can only prove that my father appeared. My mother's voice was in it, and an important voice, but it's the only movie they ever worked on together. So, and if you go to the Third Man Museum in Vienna, you'll talk to them about it and learn about my father's part.
In that case, Stephen, you have to tell us the name of your father because we will obviously know
apart from Daddy and Mummy, my father's Eric, my name is on your screen, Pullman. So if you look up Eric Pullman, you'll see at the latest IMDb Internet Movie Database lists him as having 206 screen appearances. That's the current number. Okay, back to philosophy. It's harmony and dissonance, a bit like speaking languages, and trying to understand this. We really should be in a world where there's only one language. Of course, that was Babylon destroyed all that, and Zamenhof tried to bring it back with Esperanto, but and now slowly with Google Translate, we might start understanding each other again. But then along comes philosophy with the new language again. In music and art, there's interesting that harmony is, I think, supported by laziness. We often want to sit back and not push the borders, and the borders are the ones that create modern music, modern art, modern jazz, whatever it might be, things that are different. If we take Tarantino, it's I always said when he came out with Pulp Fiction, my daughters went to see it and they were only teenagers at the time, and I tried to stop them. And the problem wasn't that they were harmed, that they were seeing blood and such in a movie. The problem was that they were already used to it. They had already crossed that border, and our generation didn't know what to do with it. They're constantly pushing the borders, and that's dissonance again. In music, certainly. We call it classic. We go to the opera, we want to see Aida and Die Fledermaus or whatever it is, because we want to sit back and relax and not be pushed by dissonance or harmed by it. So, and of course, the word modern is constantly being updated. What is modern today, of course, well, what was modern yesterday is today becoming classic. Like you mentioned, the Beatles, I mean, they're old fashioned now. Now it's gone wild, and the Beatles are the old fashioned boring stuff. That's really what I want to say, that in art, there's a constant battle between leave me alone. Harmony is close to laziness, is close to well-being. I don't want to bang my head in the wall. Okay, that's enough for me.
I disagree with much of that, but it's okay. I mean,
okay,
I understand.
Well, over that cup of coffee, which, by the way, someone wrote that they don't drink coffee, so they've got no problem with thousands of cups of coffee. I'm an addict, and I'll drink any type, so I've still got a long way to go.
You got a long way to go with.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Okay.
Roland.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Loud and clear. Good. Yeah. There's a couple of points that I wanted to make, really, from things that people had said. The first one, well, and also something I don't think anyone said yet, but it's been hinted at. Most of the comments that have been mentioned about people, of course, have talked about people feeling dissonance about this, people being dissonance about this. Well, of course, one of the questions is, where does dissonance happen? Where does it happen? And as far as I can see, it happens in people. And so the next question that arises is, well, how do they know it's happening? How do we know that something is dissonant or not? And a third problem arises there, which is, if we happen to know that something is dissonant, then we also have a something, which is apparently a sameness. So, for example, if I play, I don't know, a first and a second note in a scale, that's a dissonant pair of notes. And as I play that, I can say, yes, that's dissonant. And then a second later, it's still dissonant. I can still hear it's the same dissonance. Or is it? It's apparently the same interval that's being played, or is it? How can I identify that something is dissonant without there being a something? If it was just literally a point in time where there was dissonance, well, for one thing, I think, Ron, you would strongly disagree with that idea in the first place. But anyway, how could you recognize it if you didn't have a reference from the past that would tell you that there was a dissonance. So what I'm saying is that dissonance is a continuity of some kind, and therefore must also have a sameness quality to it, because otherwise it would not be possible to recognize. So that was, I suppose, a couple of points there. One being, where does dissonance happen? And secondly, about the nature of sameness and I suppose the correspondence between sameness and dissonance. Can there be one without the other? Also, as part of that, I wanted to say something about the recognition of dissonance. How do we know that something is dissonant? I've often heard in music apparently dissonant chords which sound beautiful. So and that progression from a dissonance to a resolution itself can be very beautiful, but then the dissonance is part of that beauty of that transition. So is that dissonant? We have another problem there with sameness and dissonance, because we've got a package of things happening that overall feels like it's harmonious, and yet within it there's this dissonance. So that's one interesting thing, I think. From my point of view, I find it very interesting to know, or to think about how we recognize dissonance. What are we comparing it to that gives us that sense of dissonance? There must be something in us, some kind of reference against which we're making a comparison. And that comparison is enduring over a period. The other thing I wanted to say was on something Michael said. I think Michael makes some great points. And the one that I found very interesting, it's quite close to my heart really, is about the tolerance for dissonance. And this interesting interplay between aversion to dissonance and stability, and what that means. And I think someone, I don't know who it was now, mentioned about evolution and adaptation. Was it you, Ron, that mentioned about evolution and adapting to change? I think it was actually.
I think it was Claudio.
Oh, was it Claudio? Okay.
I think so.
It's one of Stephen Hawking's definitions, isn't it? Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change, which I think is not bad as an idea. So you could say that unwillingness to embrace dissonance is a low intelligence behavior, whereas willingness to embrace dissonance could be considered to be a high intelligence behavior, because it's closer to that survival strategy of adapting to change, provided one can actually use the dissonance in order to change. If the dissonance becomes overwhelming and simply just crushes you, then obviously that's a problem too. But there is something interesting in that I felt was worth mentioning. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. I just want to come in there about sameness. Okay.
I knew you would.
As far as I'm concerned, there is no sameness. I mean, I don't even know what that means. That cannot be the sameness. Sameness as what? Sameness as compared to another sameness? Sameness means that something is same over a period of time, however small that is, and there's nothing that's the same over a period of time. It doesn't matter how small it is. So when you ask about sameness and dissonance, I think they're part of a continuum. The dissonance is just a lots more extreme version of sameness, which is in any case not same. It's just getting less and less and less and less same, and therefore becoming more and more and more dissonant. That's how I see it. I just don't get sameness. In the way I think about time, there cannot be anything that's same as anything else.
Could I just say something in response to that?
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to get at, I realize the problem, and I half agree with what you're saying here, but how do we recognize that something is dissonant over time? Because if we have a continuum, if we didn't have a continuum of dissonance, we wouldn't be able to recognize it. So there must be a continuum of some kind. in order to recognize it in the first place? And then the question arises, how do we know that it relates to a thing, like a dissonant interval, or some type of experience that feels dissonant? Like, for example, someone's waving a knife in front of me. I might feel that's very dissonant, but they're still waving the knife, even though they might be waving it in lots of different ways. Is there a similarity, a sameness of some kind that's happening within that experience that allows me to notice that it's dissonant? So that's kind of what I'm getting at, because if there wasn't some kind of continuity to the dissonant experience, how could we recognize that it was dissonant? In other words, if there is no sameness or no similarity, whatever we care to call it, I suppose, no container of that experience of dissonance, how could we ever know about it in the first place?
Okay.
Tricky one.
Yep. Thank you. Bill hasn't spoken yet. And yes. Can't hear you, Bill.
Hello, darling. Good girl.
Bill, you're still
That's
muted.
it.
Good girl. You want to come and see me? All right.
No.
All right.
We can hear you. It's
1
working.
minute.
There we
No,
are.
no.
Thank you.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. The comment I wanted to make is I think dissonance is the source of creativity and the source of problem solving. I think we go into a state of confusion when we have a dissonant puzzle and we want to work out a way of making it coherent. The circumstances that it presents need coherence. That's what I do and everyone does when they solve a problem. So problem solving is kind of actionable coherence that tells you what to do in the circumstances to solve the puzzle. Whereas there is a coherence, cognitive coherence that happens when you're puzzled by a phenomenon and you can't make sense of it. So when you project a paradigm to make sense of it, and it does make sense, there is that kind of quality. But coherence is the quest, the creative quest, when confronted with dissonance. And I think it's been like a continuity of development in finding solutions to puzzles, whether they're actionable puzzles, what should I do in the circumstances, or cognitive puzzles, of what the hell am I seeing? What is it? How should I diagnose this? What is this going on? And I think that the vast examples, even the dialectic proposal that's been made, is a way of reflecting that same process of confronting puzzlement and solving it, or confronting a way of what do I do and getting an answer. And I think that's what has been touched on here in so many different ways, which make the whole discussion for me very fascinating. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bill. We're gonna jump the queue and let Vika have a word, if that's all right with everybody.
Yeah.
I think it's fair, right? Okay, Vika.
Thank you very much. It's only fair where our own names are called, isn't it? So I was born in Afghanistan, and my life, the way that I lived my entire life as being an immigrant child, being the unwanted child of the world, was always accompanied by the thoughts of how and what is dissonant, why is it in my life, how is it playing with my life, and what is it doing to me and the world around me. I was always faced with a world that one day loved me and the other day hated me. One day I was that innocent child with tears on her face, pictured and all over the news, being in every news agency, broadcasted around the world, and the other day I was someone no one wanted to talk about. So many years later, millions of people killed, millions and millions misplaced. We're in 2022. The world is looking at a country that is hit by famine. More than 1 million children by the end of this year will die in Afghanistan of hunger. And you look at this beautiful world, you look at our politicians, you look at everyone that fights for human rights. There is talk of humanity, there is talk of human rights, there's talk of kindness. And yet we have decided to brush all those children under the rug and forget about them. So where am I going with this is that our personal experiences in life teach us so much more than ever we can ever learn in books. What I learned from it was that it took me to a very big question in my mind. When I think about harmony, when I think about dissonance, what is the place of both these words in nature versus nurture in building the human being that I am? Because we're all faced with it. What makes me make choices that makes me a better human being, and the other person making a choice that would make them another person with different point of views in life? So I see it. A few people here mentioned that is dissonance and is the cause of learning, is the cause of growth. And I absolutely agree with that. It's the cause of movement. Not only is entertaining, but we need it. We need it in order to move forward in life. In a spirituality, we need it to create that ripple, so we can actually we can understand, we can see the path that we're going to. In everyday life, we need to see the paths that are presented in front of us, so we can measure ourselves and we see the ability of making choices. Again, that brings us to whether or not we're capable of making any choices. Do we actually have free will and all of that? But I think at the very end, it comes back to every human being by themselves. We make that choice of how we're going to use all these opportunities presented to us in life. I'm not going into that because as far as I remember, I haven't died. If I like to pretend that I've had a life before this, I would like to see that as a very comfortable life. And maybe so often in life, we use everything and absolutely everything as a defense mechanism to create a better bubble for ourselves in life, depending on the experiences that we've had. But I think, again, not only I find the idea of harmony and dissonance interesting in order for us to grow, but it also makes an excellent tool for those who want to take advantage of so many things in life, for those in power. For the power could be in politics, could be in religious system, belief system, anywhere you want to go with that. It makes an excellent tool of abuse. The way that we can confuse people, bring in dissonance and harmony to them, and just bombarding them with different kind of news, different kind of emotions, and bringing them to the state that they're not capable anymore of thinking clearly and feeling clearly, makes it an excellent tool in the hands of those who are hungry for power. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Wow, thank you very much, Vika. That's
thank you.
And made the whole meeting worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Don't know where to go on from that. Okay, let's get back to where we were. Okay, James, I think you wanted to say something about music or some. Did you? Somebody? No. Okay. Okay.
No, I could reply to one. There was one point about music, but I applied to it in the text. There's about there's 12 intervals between melodic notes possible. And out of those 12 intervals, there's 5 that are identified by music theory as dissonant. So it's a kind of like, it's a world where dissonance in art, dissonance matters. So that 5 out of 12 is a very, very high ratio. But I wanted to talk about Katie's point about change. Is that all right, Ron?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah, the change to me, it matters whether the kind of change that you're talking about has happened before, and how comfortable people will be in that society. So if you were talking about political change, which I imagined you were, then this would be kind of like if is perceived as a kind of a repetition with something that happened in the past, then it will be easy for people to experience, like for instance, repairing roads, repairing bridges, cleaning a house, the changes that don't necessarily disrupt a lot of things are almost always acceptable, but changes that are perceived as new and untried, untested, possibly dangerous, those are the ones that would create the most dissonance. So, and of course, there's a sliding, people have talked about how this scale seems almost a continuity, almost continuous. So the scale between dissonance and consonance is in real life is a continuous scale. In science and in real life is a continuous scale. The scale between human health and human illness, for example, is a good example of that. So it can extend to a very great, especially in old age. It can extend to what is it, Jiaxi? She was, this can extend to a multiplicity of things in old age. So, and I was actually instructed in that by my father. So things get passed down to us. We know what is consonant. We know what is dissonant, and so that's the nature of human change, I think.
Thank you very much. I just want to mention that there's a lot of tapping away here on chat. Some of it's extremely interesting. I can just see now and again something's coming in. But if you do chat there, the rest of us can't sit. Bile, you are doing some very, very interesting stuff here, a lot of which I disagree with, but I don't have a chance because you're not coming out with it. It's much more interesting for all of us if you come out with your brilliant stuff. No, I don't mean you personally, I mean everybody, rather than tapping away. And I don't mind you tapping away, although I do a bit, because we just don't get a chance of seeing what you're saying. So if you could sort of hold back and say it, give me a chance to disagree, because it's been a long time since I've disagreed with anybody. So terrible.
You disagree with me.
Yeah, true. Yeah, well, yeah, but only a little bit. But, okay, so that's what I want to say. So yes. So we're going to come back now to Michael, because I cut you off, and I apologize for that, because now you can do your second bit. Okay, Michael, thank you.
Yeah, so two questions. Whether we can achieve harmony or perfect harmony or any harmony, and whether this is even whether this goal even makes sense. Should we even try to do it? So if we can, if the whole idea of goal makes any sense, then the goal, from what we know, not only about life, not only about organic world, but even about physics, it's not a harmony. It's achieving stability and survival of the system. And the idea of natural selection that was first introduced to explain the biological evolution, it's now considered also in the realm of physics, and at multiple levels, all the way down to even understanding quantum phenomena. There is this concept of quantum evolution. So in short, anything that we can observe, any system that we can observe, any universe in which we can conceivably live, they must have this quality of being stable for some time. And a lot of our notions of harmony, of something that is we have positive feelings about, is related to this notion of stability. For physical systems, this is stability, and there is a number of variational principles around this. In biology, this is what we call homeostasis. And for social systems, it's the same thing, although it's on a longer time scale, so it's not always obvious. But the whole question is whether any particular society can survive, whether any political system can survive, whether any country can survive. And those that cannot and that could not, and that's the majority of them, we just don't see them. At best, we see some archaeological evidence that they ever existed. And so in this sense, if we relate this idea of harmony to just existence, survival, yes, for some time, based on our observations, some systems can achieve this. But for how long, we don't know. Even for physical systems, even for universe, we have no idea how long it can exist. And another point for which I probably don't have time is that the definition of harmony and dissonance related to physics, even in physics, it's to a large degree, it's in the eye of the beholder. Because we don't have a reliable universal way to differentiate between very ordered systems and chaotic systems, because they can exhibit practically the same behavior. And if we rely on our subjective judgment, that's even worse, because if you saw say the set of dots generated by random algorithm, it will appear to human observer as exhibiting some sort of order, some sort of organization compared. So what we see as really random, you have to work hard in order to generate this set of dots that would appear random to human observer. So you have to write some algorithm that would not be random. So that's all very complicated, and I just wanted to caution against projecting too strongly our feeling of something harmonious or dissonant onto the real world. So real world may have different ideas about this, and we may not necessarily be happy with this idea. Yeah. So let me stop at this.
Thank you, Michael. What is the real world, by the way?
Well, that's a point of another philosophical discussion.
That's why I thought I'd just throw that bomb in for a second.
Okay. But a third definition is something that we did not include in whatever scenario we consider. So if we look at set of points, and we did not consider the algorithm that generated this set of points, then this algorithm would be, in this context, the real world, although it's also artificial.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Michael. Richard.
Okay, this is not a philosophical point, but you were asked if you had ever been in harmony and you couldn't think of a time. And I set myself to trying to think of times when, if possible, I've been in harmony. And I'm afraid there are times when I would disagree with you about now as well. The few times when I was a lot younger, when I was in total physical harmony with the world, usually because the dissonance was all around me. Say surfing and you catch a wave and you're actually riding it perfectly. You can't think the now is the only important thing. You forget about the world, you forget about everything else. You don't worry about how you look, what you're doing. It's just being there. Okay, riding a horse, when a young horse that's bucking and you sit out the bucks and you know you're there. or galloping a horse down a mountainside when there's danger all around you, but you're totally in harmony with the horse. I can only think of a couple of other things. One would be just once when acting, when you feel that you've got the audience there, but having the palm of your hand, but having talked to friends of mine who are rock musicians, they have felt this far more often when they've got the crowd just going for them. I'm afraid I haven't, but you have to have the danger that it could all fall apart. It has to be physical. And as I said, I've only felt it as a young man. Oh, skiing as well, skiing in a race and everything's going perfectly. Admittedly, at any moment it can all go wrong, but it's there. Possibly scoring tries when if you're playing rugby, but I mean, or American football or whatever, possibly then, but I don't know about that, but apart from rugby. But definitely surfing, skiing and riding, you can feel that. There's only one other time I felt it, and that was when I was in the Australian bush, and it was just on that time when sunset's coming on, and I was at least a mile away from anybody else, and I felt in total harmony with the bush. Unfortunately, the now doesn't last long, but for just that moment, the now is the only thing that matters to you. That's all I've got to say.
I won't say anything about now at the moment. I won't say anything about it now.
No,
okay.
We'll continue the argument.
We definitely will for a long time. What you're describing is what I mentioned as a perfect poise between.
That's it.
What?
It is the poise.
That's it. That is the balance between dissonance.
Yes.
Between dissonance and non-dissonance. It's the pile of sand. It's
not a pile of sand though. If you're there,
it collapse any second. But
that's the whole point.
Exactly.
Well, it can collapse. It isn't collapsing. You're riding it.
Yes, but you're only riding it because you know you're going to fall down any second. Like when you're skiing, it's all wonderful, but one tiny thing and you're off. But that is the balance that is dissonance. It is actually.
That is the harmony that's achieved through overcoming dissonance.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, no, okay.
I think you need the dissonance to get that harmony.
No, fair enough. It comes to roughly the same thing. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
You can't have one with knowing that the others are going to come any second.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't possibly know that you are.
Yeah.
There was
I can think of one other place where it could occur. I doubt whether I should mention it, but it takes two people of opposite sex, preferably, well, as you like, actually, and presumably a bit of love.
No, I'm with you on that. Have no problem. Have no problem with that one at all. That's absolutely fine. Okay, Claudio, I think you're ready to do your thing.
Yes, harmony, right? The lack of dissonance. It's not necessarily always a good thing, and I'll give you a good example. The Middle Ages, right? It was a long period. It lasted for about like 500 to 600 years, right? So you look at medieval Europe, for example, it was it was dominated by the Catholic Church, right? The popes. So everybody was under one religion, one belief system. Everything was orderly. Everyone went to church. Everyone.
It's a pity we don't have a historian here because there's no harmony there at all.
Well, everybody was in sync in a way regarding to behavior and beliefs. The church dictated.
People were killing each other left, right, and center. I suppose that is some sort of harmony.
Yes.
There was more killing there. Do you have any better example of harmony rather than people killing each other?
Well, okay, aside from the order, was it necessarily a good thing? Well, in many ways, it was a bad thing, right? Because people were not free to think for themselves, believe in whatever they wished to believe. And then you had the Inquisition, right? Because the heretics were seen by the church leaders as bringing disharmony into society, right? Because their messages was contradictory to what the majority of the people believed. So that's one example, right? But even but pluralism, though, right? It's kind of like a paradox, right? You have all these bunch of different belief systems in society. So it kind of brings dissonance, especially for those who experiment with multiple different belief systems, right? Hinduism, for example, Christianity, and so on, right? But at the same time, it can bring also harmony, because those who espouse pluralism, the notion that all major religions lead to the same ultimate reality, right? It kind of brings tolerance and peace to the world, right? You don't have the demonization of the other belief systems, right? So it's kind of like a paradox there. But if you're a religious exclusivist, on the other hand, you may think that your group is harmonious because you only have to deal with one particular belief system. Everybody is in sync, right? But on the other hand, it can bring dissonance because, especially if the groups become polarized, then you demonize the other religions because they don't agree with your belief system, right? It can cause war, it can cause strife, clashes. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Claudia. Let me put my neck out here. There's been no period in history, none, where there's been no dissonance. Never, ever, anywhere. And so if anybody can disprove that, I'd be very pleased to hear it. I mean, harmony is, anyway. James, James, you got your yellow hand up.
Thank you, Ron. Would you
Yeah.
rather it be a different color? I can change the color.
No, it's a lovely color. Leave it, don't touch it. Wonderful.
All right, then.
It's very harmonious.
Okay. I wanted to defend the future a little bit. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Everything's okay.
So the future is just like the past. I mean, it's temporality. It's how things move. It's how, things exist temporally. They have mass. They have energy. They have movement. Aristotle's one of my favorite philosophers. I crazy about several philosophers. One of them is Aristotle, and Aristotle almost had time completely right. He understood that that time is movement. He thought that time is always something that we use to measure motion. So that things, of course, you'd have to measure distances, right? He knew that. He believed in geometry, but the thing that you had to, he didn't really express it succinctly. But the thing you would add to distance would be the time that would be added to the distance, and that would be that distance for a particular type of movement would be a time. And modern science understands time. And this is understood in music, in art, in science. It's or at least in music and science, it's periodicity. So it's always periodicity. It's not a continuity. Like there's not two kinds of time. Like I believe, like differently from what you believe. I think there's only one kind of time. It's always periodicities. Whether you're making clocks, whether you're doing science, whether you're planning, whether you're a manager that's making plans for the future. You're, in other words, everything that a manager does nowadays is measured in a Gantt chart pretty much. And it's all about the future. Everything has to be the current project, whatever the project is, whatever the project that's being designed is, whatever whether it's going to take 3 days or 6 months, it's all measured out in terms of human potentialities, according to the amount of time cycles that are whether it's days or months or whatever, it's good that it's going to be required for the project. And this is all written in stone. People write that, not in stone, but they write it virtually on their computers. The Gantt charts are just like everything else that we do nowadays with computers, but it's all organized according to time in the future. We measure time in the future exactly the way we measure time in the past. And we're just as concerned about, as humans, we're just as concerned about time in the future as we are about time in the past. So I don't think it's useful to say there is no future, since everything, all time, if you just reject the idea that there's two kinds of time, all time is whether it's future or past is pretty much continuous, is pretty much measured the same way, except that we don't know, as you say, where we can all agree, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future, but we know we all have intentions. So these intentions are the way that humans have of controlling the future. So those intentions are sort of like our money in the bank. That's our money in the bank for having intentions and motivations and goals, which somebody brought up already, is our money in the bank for determining our use of time in the future. So it's kind of like defeatist, and I think to say that there's no future is to sort of say it's kind of like defeatist and goes against the whole motivation for human progress, in my opinion.
Yeah, can I answer that? The only difference between the past and the future is the past is somewhere you've been, and the future is somewhere you have not been and never will. That's the only difference, right? So the fact that we've got intentionality, that's correct. If I had money in the bank for all of my intentions, I'd be very rich, because most of my intentions don't work out, and most people's intentions don't work out. I mean, I can say that in 5 minutes I'm gonna go and eat. I can say it, but I won't. I can say that tomorrow at 10 o'clock I'm going to the dentist. That's my intention. And then just before I leave the house, something happens and I don't make it. Or I make it after 10. The point is that it's fine to say, it's obvious that we're all working towards the future. Obviously, that is the point of our humanity, that we're working towards something that's going to be. The only problem is that when you think about it, really think about it, the what's going to be never is. The potential is always there. The future is a potential. That's fair. But when we get to what we said is going to happen, it's not anywhere but the past. We can say, oh, it did happen. It did. But when is tomorrow going to happen? At the moment, we know when tomorrow is. Tomorrow won't be tomorrow. I mean, tomorrow will be today or yesterday or whatever. The potential is great, and we know and we hope, as I mentioned last time, when we get out of bed, the floor will be there, and it usually is. That's fine, but we only know it's there when we say, oh, the floor is there. The floor was there. The floor at tomorrow, and the sun will come up, and the moon, etc., etc. But that doesn't mean, as Hume pointed out, that it actually will. Just because it's always happened doesn't mean it'll happen again. So when you say that the past and the future are the same, I disagree vehemently, because the past is something that happened. The past is memory. That's it. And each one of us has a different memory and a different past. There's no objective past, and there's certainly no objective future, because all the things that people plan for don't always work out. You know, that reminds me, yesterday somebody told me that they built an enormous block of flats, and everything was great. And when it was built, and they got all the plans were labeled, etc., etc., they found out they made a very small mistake. They made the entrance to the garage for the cars too small. Not one car could get in, and that was planned, like you said. and there were architects and they did it and it was all fantastic, except for one small thing. It didn't work. That was the future. The future didn't work. It didn't happen. So how can the future be the same as the past? Now, if I say that time is the past only, that's all there was. That's how I sum it up. Now, I'm not saying I'm right, okay? I would never say that, and I don't think anybody's right in anything. But this is the way I look at it, because we just don't get to the future. It's always in front of us, always. The road not taken. It's only the road that we took, not the road that's not taken. The road not taken has nothing to do with it. It never existed, the road not taken, never did. It was always the road that we take and that we have taken, and that's it. That's how I see it. So we disagree about, but we disagree about the same thing all the time, which is fine. I have no problem with disagreement. That's the whole point of sitting here and disagreeing, and that is dissonance. And the dissonance is progress.
When we disagree with you,
only dissonance is progress, nothing else.
yeah, when we disagree, we learn something.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, your idea of objectivity is different from mine. You believe that there's a objective world, and I don't believe in that.
Who believes?
You do, because you said that's nothing. It's not time. You said something like time is not objective, and my idea of objective is based on anyone's perspective. So in other words, if we say there's an objective computer that I'm using, not a virtual one. Yeah, there's actually an object called a computer. So that's my idea of objective. So your idea means something your idea of the word objective is something that's based in reality. And I don't think something has to be based in reality. Yeah.
On the contrary, objectivity is not based on reality. Objectivity is based on something out there that nobody actually can get to, but this is objectively true, and that's objectively that. And there's nothing objective because everything is rough. It is approximate. What you'd call a computer, I don't know, maybe somebody wouldn't. It's not. To say that the last thing that I believe in is in an objective world. It's about the last thing. I just don't.
In that case, yeah.
I don't accept.
In that case,
no, but we have. Okay,
you believe it's something abstract. And
no, I don't.
For the rest of us,
no,
it's always something that we are considering as that. That's what objective means to us. So I'm just saying, your definitions skew a lot of your philosophy, though. As far as like that there not being a future, what is the past made out of? What makes the past anyway?
What makes it?
But the future, is there anything that makes the past if it's not the future?
Well, where is the future?
You're saying it's memory, like it's just inside our brains or something?
No, it's our experiences. No, it's simply things that happen. As I said last time, tomorrow, if we discuss what happened today, tomorrow, the future, right? When we discuss what happened today, each one of us will describe it in a different way. Each one of us, and that's the past. And there's no objective past because we all look at it differently. So I definitely don't look at it in the abstract way. Definitely not. I'm saying that it's absolutely subjective. And the future tomorrow, I don't know what's going to happen. I know what I want to happen. Doesn't mean it will. That's all. That's the difference between us, which is fine. I mean, it's good.
It's an anthropocentric view of reality, which we all don't agree with.
I don't have a view of reality.
Well, it's your view, your perspective of time, which would constitute part of reality for all of us, perhaps. I don't know if you say there's no reality in the sense that we don't all believe things.
I don't understand what reality is. If we all think that reality is something different, how could there be reality?
So you're saying it's undefinable. It's undefinable. That's what you're saying.
It's unaccessible.
Ineffable. ineffable, perhaps. Yeah, I kind of get your point. But on the other hand, if it's undefinable or ineffable, then it's not a useful term at all. And people
I'm not worried
use
about
it all
you.
the time.
I'm not.
You know,
I
so
know.
Of
course we
you're
do.
going to hesitate to use it, but I think you do use it.
Of course
So,
of course I use it. I know.
Yeah,
I talk about tomorrow all the time.
Exactly.
But so
Exactly.
what?
So if there is a reality of some kind, then my point about your taking time out of reality, which is what you do when you say there's no present, no future, and so forth, is kind of like taking and you give a very good anthropocentric motivation for believing what you believe. That's all I'm saying. My idea of philosophy is that it shouldn't be anthropocentrically motivated. It should be motivated by all the facts available, not just the ones that are subjective.
Facts available to human beings.
No. Well, yeah, they're available to human beings. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is a pro. Okay. Okay. Fika, do you have your hand up? Thank you, James. Fika, do you have your hand up?
I do. I do. Thank you. So you said, Ron, you said dissonance is the cause of progress, is progress. I am just wondering if what do you think about saying dissonance can be progress? Because there are so many possibilities that would be at play with these things. I can't come to peace with that. And I know one part of it, a huge part of it, any philosophical discussion is language. I am not very grateful to my creator for the position that I have been put in. I know that every one of us look at these words and we translate them in our mind, and as you said, with our own experiences in our own way. So even when we talk about the very same word, about the very same emotion, very same thought, we can have completely different definitions of those that we have to put into the box of language and present it to each other in the way that we can understand. So that is one huge cause why we can't our communication is flawed in nature. So that was one thing. If we can change that is to can when it comes to dissonance being progress. And another thing that I wanted to say, I have so many issues. One of those issues is I have problem with certainty. How can we be so certain about anything, about death, about life, about the way we think, about the way we see the future or the present? So I think the best way, at least for myself, the way that I'm comfortable with going at any discussion like that is to say it could be, or is possible, or words like that, rather than being very certain, because I'm not sure how certain we can be of the reality of our experiences or our being altogether. Thank you. I'm just a confused person.
No, we're all confused here. That's why we're all here. Every one of us is confused because we're looking for answers that we won't find. Right. But it's interesting that we're doing it, and we do it every month, and we discuss things, and afterwards we think about them, and I sometimes have discussion with people about what was said. It's interesting. It is good to be confused. I think it's good. I don't recommend, this is the way it is. That word is again, but regarding death, I'm not going to argue with you about that because some is going to get annoyed. But you know that that every religion and faith, etc., every single one, what they have in common is they say we're not going to die, and if we do, it's going to be all right over there, because that's a very strong selling point. But nobody's ever come back and told us about it, well, except for. But I mean, but basically, nobody's proven to us that there is something else. But it's a very nice thought to have, because it makes it all less frightening. And the fact that we know we're going to die makes us come to these things so that we can discuss things about what we're going to do while we're still here. Imagine if everybody thought they're not going to die. I mean, what would be the point of doing stuff? You've got to fill in the space that you've got in the best way possible, and we do what we feel we need to do because it gives us something. Each one of us, and everything that you said before proves it. You yourself has shown strength and peace of mind and stuff that came from your experience, and it's also because you know it's going to end. You must know that without even thinking about it a lot, but you know there is a space in which we do things, and that, I think, that changes the way we live.
May I speak a couple more
Of course, yes.
Thank you. I think my problem comes with how close-minded are we as human beings. I think just from the beginning, we have closed the doors to being open to receiving information that are readily available for us. We have composed some thoughts. We have communicated those thoughts with each other. We have formed ideas and opinions very, very early on. And with forming those ideas and opinions, we have literally closed the doors to everything else that wouldn't fit that structure that we have built. Why? Because we're very insecure, we're very afraid, and with that fear, we're literally robbing ourselves from things that could bring us to that inner peace, possibly, if there is anything like that. So that is, I think, where my problem comes from. When we look at life, when we look at death, we don't have a certain definition of what life and death is. Even when I think, and I know that this might sound crazy, even when you think about that, we have never faced anyone who has come back from death. How do I really know that? If I'm not open to the possibility of something like that happen, if I'm not open to people who speak something that doesn't fit literally my way of thinking, my logic, my ration, anything like that, then I very, very harshly close the door to all those possibilities, and that doesn't allow me to gain anything else more than I know. So that is, I think, where my problem comes from. Thank you.
The problem with opening the door to everything is that a lot of other stuff comes in as well. I mean, you can't open the door to everything, because you're going to get some really bad stuff that you're hearing. At one point, you close the door and say, I don't want to know about that. That's evil. I'm closing the door. Now we all close our doors, surely, don't we?
Of course we do.
So it's a bit dodgy to say I'm completely open to everything. There are things I'm not open to. I won't be. I'll close the door. I don't want to know. Right? So we don't really know what we close and why we close. And I agree with you on that. And we have to be open in a certain way, but other times, no, I won't accept that, right? And so it's dodgy. It's the thing about dissonance and harmony again, which goes through everything, right? Roland, yes.
Yeah, actually, it was what Fika was saying that kind of I wanted to mention, and it's this balance, and you've picked up on it too, that this balance between embracing dissonance and holding it off. And I do think what Fika says has got a lot to it, because I think that the ability to embrace dissonance and change yourself is a capability, it's a skill. And I think it is a learned skill. I don't think everyone's got it. And but I do think it can be learned up to a point. But I also think that it's something to do with this, what I was saying earlier on about this internal reference we have, that perhaps you could say is like, it's the thing that tells us that we're a system, that we are an organized system moving through time. It enables us to detect whether influences on us are dissonant or not, and how to deal with those things. And that internal reference is going to defend itself but it's also got to adapt. So there's this tension between what it will allow in and enable to change in it so as to align with new influences, and what it has to hold out and protect itself from. And I think we see that in all living systems, that they all have that, they all share that capability of taking stuff in and also holding stuff out. And I think it's one of those areas in, I suppose, in dealing with people, working with people, it's a very difficult area, because it's very easy to feel, gosh, if you only opened the door, you know, just think how much better your life would be. And on one level, that looks absolutely right, because if one can be adaptable, change with circumstances, open-minded, it does offer a lot of potential. But if someone hasn't got that, it's because of something going on in them. It's something in them is stopping that happen. And so it's a funny thing. I think I probably used to think in that way of like, you know, why can't you guys be more open? Or, you know, when I was talking to people. But I realized eventually that it was kind of quite inhumane on one level to expect someone to be able to open themselves up to some kind of influence that would destabilize them in some way without having the tools, the capability of being able to assimilate that. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about human behavior is how does someone get to the point of you know, extending their boundaries. It often can't happen in a sudden way because people invest in belief systems for many years of their life sometimes, and then someone comes along with something and says, well, what you believe is, you know, dodgy because of this. At that point, that person has to, if that person accepts that piece of information into them, they have to demolish this tower that they've invested in. And that's painful. I mean, on one level, learning is a disruptive process where you have to damage your existing setup and rebuild it in a new way. And I think there are definitely situations where that damage is just too much for someone to bear. At least at that moment, and maybe there's a gentler way for that to handle that. Anyway, that's what I think about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Roland. I don't know how to pronounce that. Xiaoxi, are you there? You got your hand up? Ah,
Hi.
there you are.
Hi. Yeah, I was listening to, how do you say her name? Fika or?
Fika.
Yeah, so the lady said that she grown up in Afghanistan. And then it's funny because I grew up during Cultural Revolution, and then I was 7, and then I was sent with my parents to the rural area, and then we were living in caves. I mean, those dwellings you dug up from the mountain, and then there's no school. But in another way, I thought, I don't know what it is. I felt like she and I is more optimistic to the life, not necessarily world, the life. So I was looking at this guy, Christy Murdy. He was grown up in Indian, like a philosophical society. And then he was sent to England, Oxford, to do the college. After college, they want him to be like a Dalai Lama. It's the teacher from India, but he's not Hindu. But he refused everything. But he was in California. So his idea is conflict, division create conflicts. Conflicts create war. War create suffering. He said he's not Indian, and he's not Hindu, and he's not the West. And he believes this logic, say division create conflict, conflict create war, war creates suffering. And then you know how Asian, not Asian, like Hindu and Buddhism is always want to work on this idea of how to avoid suffering in life. So that's his idea. So his idea is, since his logic is that he said, let's give up everything. Let's give up our religion. Let's everybody give up our religion because like say sensitivity, right? He said, if you're Christian, you could be very sensitive to your own people. You can go to church and care for the elderly, the sick, the poor. But at the same time, you say, no problem, I can throw a nuclear weapon to the Middle East. And so his idea is, let's give up all the religion and let's be responsible for ourselves. So each one is connect to the universe. So then you're responsible for yourself. So we're all equal. Then we can have a better world. Of course, it doesn't really work because nobody can really give up their own growing up. I don't even, I think the idea is that you like say you are born, right? If you're born in cave time, then you feel insecure because you can't survive. So you need to attach to your tribe. And the same idea, if we're born in modern society, it's so huge. How are you gonna do this capitalism, find a job, survive? So you need to attach to something to make you feel secure. That's biology. So your evolution and biology, you want to feel secure, so you attach to something. And then you basically born into like Christian or in China, whatever you were born, right? So then there's this guy, David Bohm. He was quantum physics, and then he was interested in philosophy. Then he was saying, that's not practical. We can't all give up what we believe. So his idea is, let's have a dialogue. And he said, doesn't matter how you deny or hate your enemy, but they will affect your life. So you can talk about your ideas, but their idea, it will affect you, even you deny it. So that's why his idea is we need a dialogue, not a debate saying, I'm going to convince you. And it's not like I have to say you're wrong, I'm right, or let's get together. And he said this necessity of each religion, each belief, make us there is never going to be dialogue and harmony. So I felt like so I was reading his idea is just by mistake, not mistake, by accident. So after that, I'm trying to join all these meetup. I'm trying to see if there's any possibility of dialogue. I realize it's almost impossible. It's people all has their necessity. It is like China right now. So my experience is I grown up in China, then I came to America to grad school. So I've been equally like 30 years in China, 30 years in America. And then so I totally not agree with the China now have these, one Chinese and the nationalism. It's a horrible idea. And same as Putin trying to say one Russia, and same as Israel trying to say one Jew, So I think those idea is really really bad, but at the same time, it really attracts people. And so I'm trying to see if this dialogue idea works. I'm not sure. I don't see it's working. Thank you. That's my
thank you very much. Look, if you, I hope you come again to our dialogues here. I hope you do. But what we have here, I think is very nice. We have a discussion, we have different ideas, and we talk to each other. And James and I very rarely agree, but I really enjoy talking to him. He's got good ideas, and it's what people should be doing. Basically, they should be discussing things, and not everybody's a philosopher here. In fact, most aren't. And people come out with stuff, and it's progress. It means that people can talk together and can do things, and that's why it's so good, and that's why I really enjoy it myself. And I come away with thoughts as well, and ideas, and I think about them, and etc. And I think it's a very good thing, and I hope you come again, and I hope that Bila comes again, and stops typing and let's hear it, because I've got a lot to argue with you about. Okay. So, but James, you wanted to say something? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Yeah, I really love the dialogue. This is where to start. I want to thank you, Jaja, for the information on that idea from Krishnamurti, that division is the root of dissonance, and I think the root of war. And I think there's a lot of politics, especially in the United States, that politics is based on division, and that the successful politics is based on a lot of division. And whether it's international affairs or it's domestic politics, and I disagree with that so much. So I'm really glad to hear that idea that it's from Krishnamurti, which refutes it. I think that's very nice to hear. On Fika, what you were talking about on possibility, I completely agree. You know, my closed-mindedness, I solve a lot of my closed-mindedness with kind of like an attitude, like that's above my pay grade. That's how I handle my closed-mindedness. I say, well, I can't necessarily handle this policy. That's this possibility. That's above my pay grade. So it's kind of like we probably have individual ways of handling our closed-mindedness and containing it, so to speak. I think there's a step though beyond possibility, and that's that you have to take beyond possibility towards certainty, and that is contingency. So in other words, anything that we consider has a contingency, and we have to measure contingent. The step to take in our thinking is, I think, the correct step to take in our thinking is to measure contingencies. So things have relative force. And so if you have a possibility of going to school when you're not going to school, or a possibility of starting a business and so forth, you have to create a business plan. You have to create an education plan and so forth. You have to, or select an education plan perhaps. But you have to measure contingencies. That's the next step to take in our thinking once we've been open to possibilities, because being open to possibilities is how we welcome the future. So I completely agree with that idea. I guess what Roland was talking about was just great. So I didn't write anything down, but it's the other aspect of it, which is whether we welcome change or not. I guess the idea that and that things have relative dissonances, and we have to evaluate these, but we evaluate them. I think we have to evaluate things. That's where we evaluate things carefully and according to their contingencies, and without being closed-minded. Just because we don't already think something, we have to kind of measure the other ideas. So I think there is a way of staying awake to the multiplicity of thoughts, the multiplicity of subjectivities. Is definitely a challenge for all of us. We all encounter a multiplicity of subjectivities, and that's something that that's something that wakens kind of the most human part of us. I think that to me, that's the most human part of being, is being awake to the differences in ourselves, and the dissonances in ourselves, if you will, and the dissonances that exist between us.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you. Michael, and then Fika, and then I'm going to switch the lights off. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I just was looking for this mute button. Okay.
Ah,
So
there you
just briefly, I am very much in favor of dialogue as the way for people to understand and not to fight each other. But in order for dialogue to be effective or even possible, it's the same with all other things, that people should agree to some rules. Otherwise, this dialogue, these conversations, they can become very unproductive, and instead of free speech, we can have free propaganda, fake news, and all these different things that we are struggling with now. Not only in the United States, in other countries as well. And another point is that the goal of dialogue is to prevent or to avoid these bloody revolutions and wars. And as long as this is possible, yes, dialogue is always a better option. But at some point, when it fails, and again, I cannot stop thinking about what happens in Ukraine. You just have to fight, or at least help those who do this. And in this case, it also makes it more difficult because at the same time we have to avoid this nuclear war. Although I am not sure that this is possible at all. But anyway, so it's just another example that there are limits to everything. So any good idea, which is like having dialogue, that I strongly believe in this, but still you can go, you cannot go indefinitely with this. Unfortunately, there are limits. So that's all that I wanted to say, and thank you for this discussion. I have to go to another meeting. But it was...
Thank you very much, Michael. See you next time. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Where I saw somebody waving at me. Fika, is it okay if I let Darlene speak first because she hasn't yet? So yes, Darlene, good to you to join in.
I was just waving at him because he was saying bye, but I guess I could say something. Understand, like, I just think of dissonance as something that happens when a couple that's in love suddenly has a problem, and then dissonance occurs in the relationship. And so it's really interesting for me to be hearing all these other definitions of dissonance. So anyway, that's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Darlene. Hope to see you next time. Fika, you're going to
chime in.
Who's talking here?
Ashish here. Yeah.
I can't say that. Wait a minute. I can't see you.
Yeah, I'm in a place with very low bandwidth, so I've had everybody's video off. So I apologize.
Wait a second. It's Fika now, and then
Ashish.
Then Ashish. Okay. Fika, yes.
Very much. So I'm not sure if you guys had watched Winnie the Pooh when you were younger. One part of that says the wonderful thing about Tigger is that Tigger is a wonderful thing. And that is exactly what human beings are. We're wonderful things. We're not only our past and our experiences, but also our wishes and futures and dreams and all of that. And that is why it's so important to also remember that a very huge part of us is our habits. So with that, I'm going to what Xiaoxi had to say, and I appreciate what you had to say, Xiaoxi. this is why our habits are so very important. If we look at where we have been as human beings and where we have come to, if we think how much we care about human rights, about the freedom of speech, about the freedom of thought, about just being humane towards each other, even if so often it's only in the cover of words and it doesn't become a reality. With all of that, this is, I guess where I'm going is that the importance of people, of intellectuals, kind, gentle intellectuals who understand the value of how wonderful humanity is, how wonderful human beings are. So why I say that is, instilling those habits in other people, coming to conversations like this, going around talking to other people, anyone that you come across, and literally communicating the ideas that add to human life is a wonderful thing that we do for each other. It's a wonderful responsibility that we have, and for some of us, we take that responsibility seriously, because I think it's just like addiction. Addiction is a big part of addiction is the mental stability or instability and the habits that we put into it. And it's the same idea about humans' mind, where we're going to take our lives, where we're going to take our world with that is what we want to become, what we wish to become, what we want, the dreams that we want to achieve with whatever we have learned from our past. And this is, I guess, with that, I'll just go quickly that when we look at our habits, when we look at everything that we have learned, when we look at the future that we want to be in, when we look at peace, when we want to look at humanity, James mentioned evaluation of our lives. One of the most problematic situations that we have as human beings is that the tools that we have to evaluate ourselves are very, very extremely limited. Why? Because every one of us have different tools to evaluate ourselves, because our experiences are very limited. The way we can communicate is very limited. What we can dream of is very limited. And this is why it's so very important to communicate, regardless of who we're communicating with, on which part of the world, what color, what race, what language, anything, regardless of absolutely anything that can divide us. Communication is extremely important because we get to get a glimpse into other tools that other human beings have, into measuring and evaluating our lives and on our presence in this life. So I think I will conclude with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, before I get to you, I got to say that this time it was we were privileged to have some personal stories, and I think it was quite amazing, actually, that we got that part in today, and it added color and something away from just chatting to actually hear experiences, and I thank you for doing that, for those who did. So, before I switch off the lights, Ashish, yes.
It's hard to add too much to this discussion. It's been a surprise, I would say, and I thank everyone for convening it and holding space, and then being able to express those tools, as Vika had mentioned, their own unique tools, their own perception of how they evaluate dissonance in their life. I've definitely learned a lot just listening and contemplating that self-evaluation as the conversation moved, from speaker to speaker, and contributions happened. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Ashish. Hope to see you next time. I hope you come with a video so we can see you as well. That would be much nicer. Shashi, it's your turn, and then I'm going to switch the lights off.
We're done. I guess Michael left. Maybe I didn't explain the dialogue correctly. From what I understand, what Dave Bohm said is, he said the West civilization is great. We have electricity, we have engines, we have internet, we have all kinds of achievement, and definitely it is a great achievement, West civilization. And then at the same time, he said, however, we have unintended results. The unintended results is nuclear armament. You know, we have a technology, but how come we have nuclear weapons? And then his idea said that you have to dialogue. The reason you have the dialogues is because you have these unintended results. And that's why he said you have no choice, because there's no other choice. If you only seek your truth, that's what we have been doing. Western civilization, we seek our truth, and it's really great achievements. And then the human life today is no comparison to the history. But at the same time, you have these unintended results. I think that's why he said we have to dialogue, because without it, you can't do without. You don't have to bother with other people thinking. The trouble is, he said you have to do it because other people's thinking would affect you. And at that time, he was died maybe 90s or something. And then he said, for instance, in South America, the jungle, right? And then you said that, you know, you got to preserve your Amazon rainforest. Are you crazy? And then they said, you know, we're a sovereign country. You know, what about America? You know, you have a development, you rule the world. So that's why he said you could not communicate or dialogue with South America, or South America could not bother communicate or dialogue with America. But at the same time, you destroy your own, your own benefits or your own intended achievement. So that's why he was explaining we have no choice. I was just trying to, maybe next time somebody else could explain to Michael better, because my English is limited.
Yeah, your English is very good.
I clear that up.
Better than my Chinese.
Yeah, that's. I was just trying to explain why David Bohm was saying there's no choice with this dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to switch the lights on for anybody who wants to say anything. Keep it for the next first Sunday of the month. It's to do with dissonance. I suppose you know Leonard Cohen expressed it as there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So we've got lots of cracks here. And thank you very, very much for coming. It was a great pleasure. And I hope to see you next time. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.